Welcome, everyone, to our 39th Salon. Is the maternal gift economy essentialist? We are really excited to have with us Genevieve Vaughan, Paola Melchiori, and Angela Miles. Each of our presenters will speak from 15 to 20 minutes, which will give us ample time for questions and discussion at the end. So let's begin. Our first speaker is Genevieve Vaughan. She is an independent researcher who lives part-time in Italy and part-time in Texas. She created a multicultural all-women activist foundation for a compassionate society that had its life from 1987 to 2005. She is the founding mother of the Sekhmet Temple in the Nevada desert, and she co-created the network International Feminists for the Gift Economy. She's an author of many books. You can read her extended bio on our website, but for now, let's just welcome Genevieve Vaughan.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Letecia. And thank you, everybody that came to this and the other speakers, Angela and Paola. So we wanted to talk about essentialism because that is something that has been used as an accusation against the idea of the maternal gift economy, to not take it seriously and to see it as just another way of pushing women into a maternal role and not allowing them to be in any other roles. For example, saying that our maternity is destiny. And that I think that it's a wrong perspective against us, because my idea of the gift economy is much broader than that. It's a fundamental human interaction and a way that we are all able to communicate, and that comes from giving and receiving. Communication, co-communication, means giving gifts together. Muni is gifts in Latin, and so it's a way of circulating gifts is communication. And that happens because if you look at the maternal relationship with children, that has to happen in every human life. It has to happen from early child, from the moment the child is born, and actually from before the child is born in the womb. The child's needs have to be satisfied by somebody else. And so that child receives the model of a unilateral giver, because the child can't give back anything in return and in exchange. She only can receive and grow. And she has to be able to actually suck on the nipple, so she has to be able to receive actively or creatively, not passively. There is this interaction in which this model of communication, giving gifts together, giving and receiving, is the reason people stay alive, the reason babies stay alive. And if the mother doesn't do that, if somebody, a motherer of some kind, somebody in the family or somebody in the surroundings, an allo mother, as they say, doesn't do that, the child dies. And so every child that survives has this interaction as a model in its earliest days. And that model continues for a long time until the child realizes that actually there are other ways of doing things, like there is exchange, in which you only give in order to get back. And so the child has to do things on, has to eat their dinner in order to get a cookie afterwards, or many things like that. I mean, that's just maybe a very silly kind of thing. I don't know. There are many bad things that people can threaten children with, but that is, I believe, the beginning of a quid pro quo exchange that is not actually monetary until the child learns about the market and so on. And that's around 3 or 4 years old, they begin to learn that. Our earliest days are spent in this interaction that is repeated every day and has to be repeated or we don't survive. And so we must assimilate this pattern of the interaction right away. And it's also has a lot of emotions connected with it, because if the child also feels hungry or scared or anything needs to be helped and comforted. So the interaction has to happen again and again. And I believe this is a basic pattern that unites people, and it continues even even when we're older. And not only that, it is the way we relate to nature, because we receive all our perceptions from our surroundings. And when we move and talk and act, other people receive our actions as part of their surroundings. And so we are always in a communicative mode and a giving and receiving mode all the time. And this is not that the mother is essentially that and not anything else, but she is that in a very important way for the child. And it doesn't have to actually be the birth mother, it can be anybody, but somebody has to take on that role. And or several people, or sometimes even a whole village can do that for children. But that model in our society is not respected as much as it should be. Instead, what we have is the model of exchange, the quid pro quo, which allows people to give only in order to receive. And that is a separating model. We don't give because we care about the other person or because we love them. We give because we want to get back something for ourselves. So that makes it an ego-oriented way of behaving. And that is a contradictory model of the maternal model, which is other-oriented. And one gives in order to satisfy the need rather than in order to get something back for themselves. And so, as I said, that separates us rather than, and it's kind of a negative communication, not the giving gifts together that unites us and creates a relationship. The exchange breaks the relationships, creates a relation of independence, each one from the other. And what happens then in our interactions as we grow older is that the exchange economy becomes parasitic on the gift economy, the giving, unilateral giving, and it takes the unilateral gifts and turns them into profit. And also, as far as nature is concerned, we receive from nature, and we both perceptually and in terms of our sustenance, but we also force nature to give to us. And we don't consider it giving. We consider the nature as objects and as dead, basically, not human. And then we only consider ourselves as human, and we don't consider nature as like us. But actually there is a cycle of giving and receiving between humans and nature. And if you just think of breathing in is a gift that you receive from nature, and breathing out is a gift that you give to nature, to the trees, and so on. So all of even our blood that goes to our out to our cells, is pumps from our heart to our cells, nurtures our cells, and then comes back and is reoxygenated in our heart. That too is a gift cycle. So we also have our heart, when we see something that needs to be done, our heart moves us, allows us to move towards that thing to give to it, or to receive from it, or to do other things that are not so good, like a manipulation, and or even that particular variation on giving, which I think is hitting, because people, instead of giving and receiving, giving to nurture someone, you give to harm someone, and you hit them to harm them, which is part of patriarchy. And I believe what happens with young children is that when little boys learn that they're not part of that maternal category, they are estranged. They have to find something else to be, and that turns them so often into an anti-maternal way, and also allows them to be assimilated into the market more easily as some place they can be without being maternal. So actually, the whole issue of essentialism, of what is the essence of a mother or a child, is altered by the market economy, because it makes the maternal not part of the market. It makes the maternal extraneous, an externality. And yet the whole issue of unpaid housework, unpaid childcare, that actually sustains the market, this is the gift economy in the present day. And it is free work. And we, instead of looking at it as unpaid work, we need to look at it as gift work, that's being given to nurture. And part of that model, while the exchange model is an alternative anti-gift model, actually it disguises the gift of profit, which is that made out of surplus labor and the women's labor in the home, and the free gifts of nature. So we have a huge amount of gifts that are given to the market, and so they sustain the market. And that women's part of it that is not monetized is not. We can't say it's essentialist, because that is the essence of women, is to nurture. It's not that. It's the way the market is set up parasitically over the free labor that is in the home, as well as labor in nature and surplus value in the market. So that's why it seemed the idea of calling it essentialist, or some specific role of women, it just serves to hide the actual importance of that free labor and free giving that is everywhere, and makes the market seem like the main way of living. it's very hard now to think of living outside the market, although people are trying it. But it has been used, it's spread everywhere now, the market has, and into indigenous societies and over the whole globe, taking over and taking the gifts whenever it can. And this is what is really wrong with our society now. We can't continue in this way, because all of the free gifts that were being given among people all over the world are being taken and destroyed and polluted by the market mechanism. And that means that we can't keep doing that. We have to move from the way we're doing things, from the capitalist economy and from the patriarchal ways, to a free gift economy based on the kind of care that women do free in the home, that nature does, that indigenous people did forever throughout the prehistory and history and recent history up until now. They've been doing it and being also invaded and colonized by the market economy, because the market economy has to get free gifts. And that's what we need to recognize. So it's not a question of essentialism, of women being the ones that have to give the gifts only. There are gifts everywhere being given throughout the whole economy and throughout the planet. And it is the capitalist market economy that is a small parasite on a huge planet that is giving gifts of all kinds. And that particular way of doing economy is destroying the world that we know and that we must love, because she is our Mother Earth, and it rightly called that because she does give to us free if we know how to receive it. So sometimes you may need to go and cultivate the field in order to be able to receive the gifts that the plants are giving you. But that is a way of receiving that we do. So that's what I have to say basically about essentialism.
Thanks, Jen. I love that notion of cultivating the field, not just in agriculture, but your field of study and the fields out in the world that you want to be able to create deep and caring relationships with. That's beautiful. Our next speaker is Paola Melchiori. She is the founder and past president of the Women's Free University in Milan and Crinali, the Research and Intercultural Education Association. She is also president of the International Feminist University Network, an international think tank for women's critical thinking and education. Again, you can read more about Paola on our website. So welcome, Paola.
Hi. I was very much intrigued by this question, even if, and also by the fact that in a way I felt obliged to answer in this space. And in a way, what Jen is saying makes me think that we should discuss this among the people who are here, because we come from very different places. Anyway, so I'm going to be shorter than I thought, because what I thought Jen was asking, or what to go against the accusation of essentialism. The accusation of essentialism came very much inside feminism. So, and perhaps more in the past. But even now in the last perversion of all this gender ideology, which is putting everything on the essentialist wall, But so what I did, I rethought what was called essentialism in the debate among feminists in the Northern Hemisphere at the beginning, because that was where a certain feminism was born, crossed paths with the gift economy, because I crossed paths 2 or 3 times, and the main reactions were inside feminism of that time, and perhaps we can say Northern feminism. So what I want to trace is a story of these crossing paths, and how, in a way, how in every of these phases, I would say 3 phases, the 70s, 80s, the 90s, and then afterwards, that goes to today, when the women from the South came in a way over destabilizing our white colonial universalism that had very much this issue of essentialism inside. And in these phases, the accusation of essentialism was different, because after all this recollecting, I have now the idea that in a way this essentialism is a loose label that is used differently in different moments and contexts, and how and why. So I would say in a way that the question from what Jen has described, which is the today formed and clear gift economy theory, is not very pertinent, but perhaps it was pertinent in the beginning and in the development. So we can perhaps now understand why that was the main accusation to the gift economy from the feminists, and why why gift economy had a hard life in feminism, I would say. No, Jen? At the beginning, at least.
Maybe a little bit in the beginning,
Yeah.
yeah.
So we have to remember that it was, when we started as feminists, it was a defensive category to be non-essentialist, to start to just negritude, to give a foundation to the first struggles. So it was a research to identify characteristics inside a certain group of humans that were explored and oppressed, but in another way than the Marxist description of exploitment, which was there, in the framework of the 70s, the end of the 60s. And together with this, it was the existentialists, Betty Friedan, Simone de Beauvoir, the idea that the only possibility for a woman to imagine her future, and that was my situation in the 60s, in the 50s, 60s in Italy, in a small Catholic town. Our future was only the possibility to marry somebody and to be a good wife and a good mother. So at that time, the problem was denaturalize any natural destiny, refusing biology, nature of that time, the idea of the angel of the house, which was based on motherhood and woman as mother. So the work was to get out from the house and to deconstruct the idea of the mother, extracting in a way the woman from the mother. So, and today, very strangely, if you think about that, the Iranian mot d'ordre, how do you say passwords? How do you say the slogan, the mot d'ordre, I don't know the English for that, are woman, life, freedom. And the cutting of the hair, the freedom of the body is very similar, I would say, to this beginning of all the difference, but with this beginning of feminism, where that moment to become free woman and a subject and not an object was to deconstruct motherhood and extract the woman and the freedom of our body. So this is one that was an obstacle, that was one of the characterization of the motherhood at that time, which was waiting a lot on the developments. So it was sexuality against maternity, to put it. Then in this context, motherhood was considered an institution. And what we did was to put the experience of real mothers, as we did with conscious raising, inside this scheme. And with that, motherhood came out as an experience, good or not, but a land of ambivalence, where a woman was experiencing a power, but a power which was not a choice. And so that power was also a powerlessness. And to navigate between these feelings was part of the conscious raising of the mother of that time. So in this path, what was interesting is that motherhood was refound, not as real motherhood, because real mother was suspended in that time, so rebellion, no, and becoming subject and women. Motherhood was instead, but very present, suspending the biological mother in favor of a symbolic mother. Because what was happening in those conscious raising groups, and also I think in one of our Wednesday meetings, is that there is an experience of mothering among women, which gives women the recognition, women and us, the recognition that the mothers that are devoted to patriarchy, so are giving the recognition only to sons, instead is giving to women. So we had a symbolic motherhood played as a tool for feminism against a physical, biological mothering. And this was a very important epistemological tool, I would say, because it was recognizing, finding a genealogy. So finding the ancestors, so the women who had been rebellious in their own life and had paid a high price for that. And that was the first genealogy, and it was not a physical genealogy, right? Like it was a symbolic genealogy, or a symbolic is the only way that comes to me. So the only thing in that time, the first polarization between essentialism and cultural rebellion came out because some of the women, Gilligan, Sarah Raddick, and were exploring what was the difference of women from men anyway. So which kind of culture we could build staying among ourselves, which was radically different in terms of not being for war, all the characteristics of the women, being caring, all the Gilligan work that, because you are more American than European in this context, was tackling these characteristics that afterwards were described as essentialist. So of course, the gift came into this basket, and it was easy to say it's essentialist because it was talking about mothers, about all the good things about mothers and so on. So this was a phase. Then we didn't think that this was the situation of white women in the Northern Hemisphere. And at that point, something happened in the 90s. How much time do I have? Because I say that I'm short and then I'm not short. 5, 10? So anyway, I tried to be short. So in the 90s, what happened? It happened then, other streams came in. So the women from the South start to change completely the narrative among women. And so we had to confront a completely different experience, not of the monogamic, you know, in the strict capitalistic, but we have tribal maternity, power of the mothers, and so on. Then we had other streams. Ecofeminism came, so all the idea of nature as mother, and the nature considered as object from the man, from patriarchy, came into the forefront, and this was not there before in the first feminism. Then we had some important struggles. So we had the peace movements of women in Argentina, the Mothers of May. We had the mothers in Chechnya and Russia that were going to the borders to find their sons together in the war in the Chechnya and the Russian war. We had Yugoslavian women doing the same among different nationalistic borders. So we had Croatian, Bosnian, and Serbian women whose sons were killing each other, that were crossing borders and trying to do the peace movement together. So this, and then we had the matriarchal studies. I'm not naming the gift because the gift is in a way what you, and then we had the matriarchal studies that were describing peaceful societies. And then what we had the fact that emancipation in the North Hemisphere meant that women who had that women that were happy to go out to work, not to be the angel of the house, start to desire to be a little bit more angel of the house. Why? Because emancipation meant that they couldn't have the time to have children because it was double work. So they had to run, and the new idealization was not the mother, but was the woman who can have it all. So goes to work, go have children, takes care of the husbands. I mean, is a complete, and which is absolutely capitalistic idealization, but is the have it all woman. So in that sense, the motherhood as a good thing and not this trap for all women came back in a good sense. And I would say that since the after 2005, something, generally, because things happen in different times in the world, the idea of going deeper in understanding what motherhood really means outside of these traps for women, so the good side of mothering, the model side of mothering came back. And this, now, just to give you an example, in this in the Free University, in this place where naming mothers, real mothers, they didn't talk to me for a year when I decided I wanted to be a mother, and it was impossible. Now they are having groups to with young women to go deeper in what is the desire of maternity, the experience of maternity, and all that, which is a completely new sign in this movement. So, just to conclude, this takes me to two paths which are very important to go beyond this idea of essentials, because the gift economy is another thing, is a description of the complexity of the society, a theory on that shows the hidden layer of that and the role of women in that, and the gift as the common work that describes that. So it has a broader view, a broader scope. But there are these two paths are, one, the culture of the South. We have to find more bridges with the culture of the South because we have such different experiences. They have a different, completely different epistemology. They don't have our dichotomies between mind and spirit. They have collective knowledge and not individual knowledge. They have all many things that we dream about. So the border between private and public is already different, and the mother are not slaves of their men, it seems. But we have to build the bridges of understanding, because the way how their knowledge is produced is so different that if we don't translate to each other, that I think we don't take all what we can take from this difference in elaborating a new perspective on what women and mother can do to transform the world. So this is one thing. The other, and I can go more in this translation of epistemologies between North and South, because it's one of my passions today, because in a way the negation we did as the North to the South has to be more explored. But I cut this, I can say that later in another moment. The other thing is that the pandemic has showed what is sustaining life. Is exactly what you say since ages. So what is sustaining life was clear in the pandemic, was the women, the mothers, the caring. So the clarity that or we go to a society of caring, of motherer, of gifting, because that was in the pandemic was really gifting the life, was not a work, a job of caring, right? So we have to go there. And in this sense, I think the gift today is much more important, and saying things for the today history than before, because it has these two elements together and inside. And also the attempt but here we need transitions. How the hell are we going out of the market? How creating these islands is possible, is sustainable, is all that are, I call the double T, translations with the South and transitions to the gift economy, because it's visible for a certain amount of people. Now we have made it visible, but to the practicability is more and more difficult, because the market is strangling more and more even our brains now, because what they are describing about algorithm and all that is terrifying in a way, right? So that is my, in a way, recollection about the reasons why it was so difficult to accept the gift economy, and it was so easy to accuse it of essentialism. And I was just naming the fact that today there is this debate about this ideology of gender that, of course, will say that gift economy is the most important essentialist in the world. But, this is, it's so dangerous, but it's also so, it took such an importance and is so minimal respect of what we are going through today that I don't want to even lose time, but this is where today the essentialism accusation is coming from, I would say. And I don't want to lose time to talk about it, because really it makes me, I think it's an insult to the work of years of feminism, trying to give women, which is more than half of humanity, an existence. And now a minority group is just spitting on this without any, I don't know, any shame. So that is the one piece of what I was going to say. And then, of course, I think it's clear that I don't think that the gift economy enters the category of essentialism from this description. That's it for now.
Thanks, Paola. I think it's really important that we know this idea of where these roots came from, of where the accusation of essentialism and the maternal gift economy was rooted in. So I think you made that really clear. And I love this idea of translation and transition. You know, how do we translate from the South some of these things that are automatic still there, and how do we exit the market? What is that transition? So I will have plenty of time at the end. We have one more speaker, which is Angela Miles, and hopefully we'll give Jen a chance to respond and then open it up for discussion between the three of you and questions also to come in. So Angela Miles is a founding member of Toronto Women for a Just and Healthy Planet, Antagonish Women's Association, Feminist Network for a Gift Economy, and a member of the editorial board of Canadian Women's Studies. You can actually find out much more about Angela. She's also an author at our website, but I want to make sure that we have time at the end for discussion and questions. So Angela, welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, I heard that reminder that we want time at the end for questions, and I'm very cooperative with that. So stop me if it doesn't seem like I am. I'm wanting to stop, really. Okay. So I think this is very important for us to try to kind of understand what we're up against, actually, with how very, very difficult it is to speak of women and to speak of mothers at all without being interpreted in a way that is as if it's reactionary. It's kind of amazing, but it's true. And that's what we're up against. And it's so clear, as Jen was introducing, that gift economy is about all human beings as givers, from birth, by shaping, and at our core. And how patriarch has introduced and is built on an interruption of gifting among us with exchange. And how that's at a core and a root of what needs to change. We talk, how are we going to get there, to understand what it is. And that gift economy theorizing is a materialist basis for the visions that autonomous feminists have had, North and South, I would say, for the second wave. That history is destroyed and it's not understood, and it's the notion of sisterhood and the idea that women in all our diversity share an oppression is called essentialist. How many times have we been silenced and have we been divided by that notion? And I'm not going to talk, don't have time to do it, but it'd be very interesting to look. I have collected numbers of quotes and so on from feminists, North and South. Lesbian feminists, Black feminists, disabled feminists, poor women, and women in the system of prostitution, all affirming their centrality to all feminisms, not their own special feminism, but their place and the insistence that feminism is not feminism if they aren't in it, and saying we need to be together. And the second wave feminism in its most important and progressive tendency was always about that. Women speaking where they were from in their struggles with their men and particular place with the patriarchy and the capitalist and the racist colonial system, saying, this is what feminism is about. Critiquing, struggling, challenging. Struggles in now about lesbians being able to be named. Poor women insisting they are a majority of women in all their diversity around the world. And I've got some quotes from North and South. Also, the vision that the insistence that we need a world very, very different that is not male defined. But speaking, it's not going to be woman, it's not going to be a gendered female world. It's going to be a human world, which is going to have the shape of women's priorities, women's responsibilities, women, actually. That feminists affirming. The Academy says we had two tendencies of feminism. One was about equality, which of course is not a transformative movement, is not a vision. And the other is about essentialism and women. And it's not about, whatever, I don't know what it is supposed to be, affirming women. Anyway, is off the page. It's not there. So that kind of invisibilization of a tendency, of the most progressive tendency of feminism, has been constant. And that's another piece that I'm not going to do, which is all the different forms that has taken and how incredibly horrendous that is. And just before I get to the piece that I do want to talk about, let me show you two slides, both of them very slowly. I want slide number 1, please, Diane, first. And I want you to read it carefully and think about it and see how that sounds to you. Well, maybe I'll read it. The creation of scarcity, the globalization of spiritual and material poverty, and the destruction of cultures and species are not failures of a wealth-creating system. They are essential expressions of a parasitical, centralizing system which denies the gift-giving logic of human relations and community. Sound good? Obviously, of course. Now give us number 2, Diane, please. I'll read you it again, the whole thing, because it's true and it's important that we all know this, of course. The creation of scarcity, the globalization of spiritual and material poverty, the destruction of cultures and species are not failures of a wealth-creating system. They are essential expressions of a parasitical, centralizing system which denies the gift-giving logic of mothering. Okay, what does that sound like? Problematic, uneasy, difficult for people to understand, getting an idea that it's some not seeing that. And I think we can all internally, why I'm saying these things is to say the part of the big question is why, even though we are silent, it is very important to say women, and it's very important to say mothering, and however much one can be misunderstood, and however much that misogyny is used to have us misunderstood and silenced. So I don't know, I wish we could have a show of hands. Do you feel the difference of how one is so easy to say and the other is so difficult to say, or not to say, to be said without being put in a hole or a spot or misunderstood? So that's the context which we're having to do this work in, and why Genevieve and those in the gift economy network are calling it a maternal gift economy theory. And I think it has to be done and it has to be understood. And in a way, it harks back. There's a quote. I'll read you from. So I have a number of quotations. Maybe if I can remember the numbers of them, Diane, I wrote it all down carefully. I will just some quotes from feminists, North and South, saying how important the change is, what kind of change we want. Well, here's the one. The number 3 would be good, Diane. It's short enough, I'll read this one. Our goal must be to obtain full human status for women in every area of human activity. And this is not to accept the present human activity realm of the male. Values in the male realm today are firmly rooted in the evils of power, dominance, and oppression. We must look for a broader and deeper definition of human life. Now, number 4, please, Diane. It's too long to read this one, I think. It's a quotation from Kamala Bassan about how we struggled to get in the mainstream, and now we have to get a new vision, an alternative. It's a distinct value. We need a new notion of everything. Ehrenreich in English, a statement way back in the 70s, we will not enter the market on its own terms. We want a different basis, which is caring, et cetera, et cetera. And then there's a few other quotes and my point is, let me also give you a quote here from Adrienne Rich, which is very interesting. And I think Paola alluded to it. It's very useful to have that chronology of actually how so much of the most radical and transformative of feminist practice, by which I mean autonomous women's practice that women define the priority and they decide who their allies are. They may call themselves feminists, they may not call themselves feminists, but it is autonomous women's politics. That has much of it is mother-based and not incidentally. Anyway, Adrienne Rich, as an autonomous radical feminist, drew a distinction between the experience of mothering and the institution of mothering. And the quote, I'll read you a quote from Adrienne Rich. The tenderness, I don't have it here, the tenderness, the passion, the trust in our instincts, the evocation of a courage we did not know we owned, the detailed apprehension of another human existence, the full realization of the cost and precariousness of life. The mother's battle for her child with sickness, with poverty, with war, with all the forces of exploitation and callousness that cheapens human life, needs to become a common human battle, waged in love and in the passion for survival. But for this to happen, the institution of motherhood must be destroyed. And the changes required to make this possible reverberate into every part of the patriarchal system. So that's another example of how throughout the second wave feminism of the autonomous feminists, North and South, was this understanding that when you affirm women and you fight feminist battles, autonomously defined and built with allies that we choose if they're there. That is a human struggle. That is for all of humanity. The struggle for women in its most progressive tendencies, it isn't about equality alone. It's not about being equal with the men in a world that's, life denying at best. It's about a different world. And gift economy theorizing is the materialist basis, I'm sorry I don't have the two longer quotes. I could read them to you actually, from Ehrenreich in English and from Vandana Shiva and, anyway, I have numbers of quotes and they're all saying we need a different basis for the world. We need a new world. And to see the difference, to see exchange value and gift economy as two basically different paradigms. Gift economy or gifting is the human shape, and it is the shape of the future if we're going to have a future. And it is formed in our relationships with whichever mothering, caring relationships we have. That is how we were formed. Exchange relations interrupt that. And giving are unilateral relationships, not meaning only one person involved, but meaning they flow. The direction, it doesn't have to be quid pro quo. People aren't engaged in gift relationships for what they can get back. And by definition, paradigmatically, exchange is engaged, hopefully, so two people benefit. Usually in this world, so one person gets a profit and benefits more. However, even those equal exchanges, which are engaged in out of relationship, have interrupted a gift flow. And that's an alienation. That's our basic human alienation. It's patriarchal. And then you construct a gender that's superior and other than all the basic human relationship. And we have the world we're in now. And I think it's very interesting, the difference in right now in the context we're in from those earlier quotes from feminists saying, my God, we don't just want to be part of this, for God's sake, is that not only that we have gift economy theorizing so we can see actually we have a materialist understanding and conception of what's wrong in terms of exchange at its very base and where to go. I mean, to me, that's the light's on, okay? In a big way, in a very important way. But the difference is now people might still feel a bit nervous that you're talking about mothers, and trying to see the world and the relationship that way. It's understandable, and it's not by chance in patriarchy. It's that nobody thinks we're alarmist. Nobody thinks it's not that bad, back in the day, and feminists were saying, this is anti-human, this isn't nice for our children, stop. People, some people sort of had a good progressive analysis and could see how it could be better. And maybe there shouldn't be war all over the world. But now, surely nobody thinks we're on a good path nowadays. And that's good and bad. I mean, it's not very good. It's a very small silver lining, but it does mean that part of it doesn't have to be explained. The fact that it's that bad, and how important it is for the analysis to get where gift economy theory and Genevieve Vaughan has put us and given us. In every single one of the areas where it's understood that the struggle is a transformative one, it has to be transformative, needs this theorizing, and hopefully will embrace it. And then there's this fear of essentialism. It's like a nasty snake guarding the patriarchy and exchange or something, and men. But that's the struggle. That's one of the struggles. And it's big right now, especially because it's so urgent. And it's so obvious that we need a different paradigm, and we have it within us. We're shaped that way. And that's a comfort. But as we get closer to the brink, it's less comforting for me because there's less time. But anyway, I think this is where we do have to look at essentialism and do a critique. And if I have any more time, I'll tell you. I can quote you from socialist feminists and gender and development people and post-structural feminists. And this is not the anti-feminist. Avoiding the woman, refusing it as essentialist. So this is something that we have to look at in this movement. Not, I think, as Paola has pointed out and Jen has made clear, not among women who aren't ideologically committed to, I don't know what, but or captured by the fundamentalists, but within the feminist movement. But there's plenty of struggle out there that is for transformation and doesn't yet see gift and mothers. So I think there's the place to push. Anyway, thank you.
Thanks, Angela. I think you brought some really important points and some interesting quotes. And maybe if you can gather those, we can post a document that has them along with the video at our website when it goes out.
Okay. Yeah, sure.
Jen, did you have any comments that you would like to make at this moment before we open up? And I'll check with Paola too.
Yeah. Thank you both. I loved both of your talks. They were really gave a lot of meat even for people to think about. I'm a vegan now, but anyway. I think, we need to redefine human beings. We need to redefine our species as Homo donans rather than as Homo sapiens. First of all, we don't know what we're doing. We're not sapiens. We're not wise. And we're not Homo economicus either. What we are is Homo donans, the giving being, or giving and receiving being. That is established in every life when you're young, otherwise you don't survive. And I believe that that's also the basis of language. Giving and receiving is also the basis of language. And of, as I said, it's the patterns of epistemology, how we know is through receiving and giving knowledge, and many other aspects of life. But that has been wiped out of Western academia and Western knowledge, because men were not doing the nurturing. And so they didn't take care of little children, and then they went and philosophized, and they never even imagined that that was actually happening. And at the same time, we've had a brainwashing, as somebody mentioned in the chat, that has allowed capitalism to continue to exploit gifts of all kinds, and has washed out gifting from the public consciousness as the basis of life, and has allowed also our capitalist and colonialist enterprises to invade and exploit and take the land and take all of the gifts of the indigenous people throughout the world, and continue to do that even through globalization at various different levels. So it really is the ignorance of the gift, or the blindness to the gift, is very negative for who we are as a species, because that blindness is allowing us to continue to perpetrate all of this horror on the earth, and create the environmental destruction that is going to be this end of gifting altogether. So in order to get the perspective of the gift economy back into the public mind, we have to work on trying to talk about it, but also just really using the gift words rather than exchange words. You know, we'd start out by talking about exchanges between mothers and children. Well, that's not exchanges. It's not an exchange. It's a giving and receiving, and giving again and receiving again, and then giving to other people, receiving from other people, and the gifts go around. It's not based on obligation to give back. It's based on imitation, imitating that model. The child imitates that model of the mother or the motherer. And that is one of the bases of our whole society. If we can begin to alter what we say and how we see things, then that at least gets a little inroad into the consciousness of the public, and we begin to see ourselves as homo donans, as the species that we don't really deserve to die as a species, because we've been doing something that is opposite of what we should be doing, because we misunderstood who we were, and we did that and continue to exploit parts of our societies and parts of our planet, and instead of just sharing and giving and receiving, which is what we really are. And so we have not been acting as we are, according to our game plan or our operating system, our basic operating system. And so we're going into tilt. And we need to realize that capitalism and patriarchy have made this bad knot, and we've got to undo that knot. somebody asked me the other day what I thought of capitalism, and I thought that capitalism is economic patriarchy. And then I was thinking again, now what is patriarchy? Patriarchy would be psychological capitalism. So those two entities of patriarchy and capitalism are merged, are fitting together, and they are taking from the gifts of people, men and women, and especially women and children, and the whole planet. So we can change this.
And colonialism, but
Yeah, and colonialism, and one group takes from another group, one race takes from another race, or many other races. So you have this sort of centralizing patriarchal figure that is, for example, the United States and its policies, or a corporation and its policies. Anyway, I can't just go on and on, but there.
You could, Jen. I'm sure you have plenty to say. But I appreciate that you're holding this space so that everyone else can contribute, and we might get to some questions. But I just want to say my brain.
To add one
Yes.
thing, all this today, these connections, this connection between what you said, this colonialism, patriarchy, and capitalism are so visible. And 10 years ago, in a way, it was not like that in the public opinion. But today is why this visibility is not, doesn't take people enough to a general rebellion. So is it only the power of corporation? Is it also something inside us that is not able to find a way out from this market and this strangling of the market today? That is really, because the time is going very fast now in this, they are in these links. So anyway, let's give the time to the questions. I'm sorry, I was also thinking.
Yeah. I agree with kind of a blind spot that we have to address. That is, we have to get through the blind spot, but I don't want to go on.
That we have to go through the shadows to find the light. That is perhaps in a way, right? That is the blind spots, because they are blocking something in this clarity that we see and doesn't operate enough.
Right.
Yes. I can see that this conversation is so deep and so important that perhaps we can do a follow-up sometime in the future, and maybe have an open discussion. But for now, there's so many comments and questions that have come up. So I'm wondering, Liliana, if you can pull out something that for our speakers to respond.
Got it. Okay, I have a comment from Maria Suarez. Maria Suarez says, we are nature and nature operates through gift giving. It is sad to see that human species have distorted that fact by creating exchange relations as a power issue in order to be able to expropriate from other species and even within our own species, and has turned it into a political global system to amass and expropriate all. What I like about what you're saying is that even within that global system of exchange, our seedlings, children, learn the gift giving first and foremost in the relation with the mother, and learn it in that human relations, and can learn it in the rest of nature. When they search for flowers, for water, try to understand their relationship to the rest of nature. They very soon learn the exchange because it has become so all-encompassing by capitalist patriarchy. That was from Maria Suarez.
Thank you. Does anyone have any comments to that, Jen, Paola, or Angela? A response, or I think she said some very wonderful things
Yeah.
there.
True.
I have a comment because it's really also what Jen said. Name the gift. Name the mother doing what Maria describes, because
Mhm.
it's a pure nature giving, but you don't see the effort, also the fatigue. I mean, the real mothers have also go through effort, fatigue, tiredness. You know, it's not so, it's spontaneous, but it's also hard. And we have to be able to keep this in our heart so we can name the mothering in its reality and in its beauty. And naming, it's true, what also you, Angela, was saying before, we don't name this enough in their own with their own names, the real names of the real people who do that, right? It's we are ashamed. I wonder if we are a little ashamed, you know, of not be of the reactions, or you know, we should be perhaps daring more to do that. This is also, I'm also beating myself up. Okay?
Yeah.
I wonder.
I think one of the problems with naming that is they're out in the current paradigms, in the dominant paradigms, it is either saintly or oppression. There's no way to name this relationship.
Saintly, what
The
is
mothering. There's no way to name the kind of caring, the kind of other orientation, the kind of relationship among human beings. If you're giving, you're saintly. You're claiming you're perceived as being other. It's hard to say what you do without complaining about it, and being seen as oppressed, or without not claiming and being and look like you're claiming to be somebody superhuman. It's very difficult to just simply describe a mothering relationship without getting put into that it's just human. And that's what we're talking about. It's very, very difficult.
I think what you're saying, Angela, which is what Jen often says, you know, if we reference, we have to change our paradigm so that mothering is actually how we measure the caring and everything else that we do. And we need to name it that way in order for people to be a little uncomfortable, number one, but number two, to recognize that everything that we're doing is part of mothering in that unilateral way.
It's human.
And yes, it is human, but we say human then becomes non-mother. Exactly. So
yes,
we need
very, very difficult. Yeah, Jen, you want to say something? I'll take a place after you.
Okay.
Yes.
I just wanted to say that mothering is self-sacrificial because the system creates scarcity, and that makes it mothering difficult. The system takes all the gifts out of the environment and leaves mothers by themselves in families without any support from the environment around them. No other mothers. Usually they're all by themselves in a family, in taking care of children, and they don't have any support. They don't have any community, and they have to do it by themselves. So it is self-sacrificial, and they may not have enough food, and they may not have enough of anything because they are not assimilated into the market. Yeah. And then when they get assimilated into the market, it seems like the market is the answer to everything. So that, you know, the mothering thing gets left out.
Yeah. And I think actually when the mothers do get assimilated, they find it isn't the answer to everything they maybe thought it was. But anyway, you know, I think that distinction that Adrienne Rich makes between the institution of motherhood as it is in our society And the experience of those relationships is different. One denies the other. I think it's really good. But the other thing that I wanted to add about this, how to speak about this, I think a very, very important thing is to name the exchange relationship as an interruption, for people to see that exchange relationship as a separation of ourselves from each other and from our own humanity, from how we're shaped. If we can see exchange as that paradigm that is at the root of the problem, why we don't have a human society anymore, is what will make it more possible to speak about mothering relationships and relationships as human. Because you have to see that the exchange are not, in order to see the discussion of what it is that mothers do, the kind of caring that we all grow up in, is basic. It's human. So and I think it's hard to see caring relationships, mothering relationships in an undistorted way. And it's impossible to see exchange. It's just presumed to be the basic human relationship. We're taught, and our whole society sees the basic social relationship as exchange, because there are two people involved in it, both for what they want, which is an interesting concept of humanity and what we're about. And it's also absolutely leaves invisible, completely off the radar, gift, which is the basic. It's not just even that there are two paradigms, gift and exchange. There's one, and it's the human paradigm, and the other is really a distortion, a bad distortion. So how to see that? How to make it current? When we read those two quotes, I'd kind of like to do a poll of the listeners, I don't know if it's possible, to see whether people did have a different response to the first and the second one, because I may be unusual in that. I can really see how differently I felt different looking at them. And one was much easier and more relaxing to say and sort of dead obvious. And the other one was, oh, look at all the baggage that's here in this one. So anyway.
Thanks, Angela. Liliana, did you have another?
Yes, I do. I have a comment from Katie Wallace, and she says, matriarchy has always been here. Otherwise, we would not be alive. Space needs to be open, and women have to start speaking and be honored by the men who actually wish to learn something new, showing them that abstract left-brain thinking is part of the problem.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think anyone here disputes that. I think that's Jen.
Yeah, I think the abstract left brain thinking actually comes from the market and from the exchange of commodities and money, which there is a philosopher called Alfred Sohn-Rethel who talked about how this act of exchange was actually an abstract act, and how that influenced our thinking because we do it every day, and we are then influenced to see things in abstract ways and do abstract philosophy and use those abstract perceptions as the basis of our thinking rather than the real life. And gifting is part of real life. And the way that the exchange abstraction works is that it denies gifting because it's an exchange, it's not a gift. So you don't see the gift anymore. And then even though, you know, with the profit, the gift of the surplus labor, the labor in the home, the labor of, well, the gifts of nature, all of that flows into profit, but you don't see that.
Yes.
It's part of a blind spot because we have done this abstraction, this exchange abstraction, and we see things in those terms instead. And that's what patriarchy does. And let's see if I can say something about, I think that what happens with men, boys, is that when they're told they're in a different category from their mothers, that they're in a different gender, they're a different kind of thing, they see that the whole gifting part of life is really not theirs. And then they have to create another kind of an identity, which they use the adult men as their models for. And that takes them away from the gift economy, and they take on this other kind of identity with a different model. And that is really what I think happens. It's very similar to exchange in the market. In fact, I had the idea to say exchange is really a sex change, or sex change is really exchange, because it takes them away from the gifting way and puts them in a mode of comparison with a standard, which is male in the one case and money in the other case. And so money can evaluate how big or small you are and how important you are and all of that. Whereas in the gifting way, you receive from your mother, and that gives you value as a person. She recognizes your intrinsic value by nurturing you. So that is a different kind of a value, a gift value that's given to people through gifting, whereas the exchange value is an alteration of that. And we are relying on the alteration rather than on the gifting. Anyway, that's part of, I think, what happens with gender. And I'll just tell you one little speculation that I've been making. And that is, I think boys would like to be part of the gift economy. Little boys certainly would like to stay in the realm of their mother. But then they have to not do that and have to be in the realm of the other gender. So in a way, trying to be trans males is boys trying to be like their mother and being part of that category, in a way, is kind of like trying to get back to the gift economy. So that's just one. I think it's a way of trying to do that physiologically rather than mentally, understanding it mentally. So it's not actually working. It doesn't really work to change society in that better direction, which is maybe what they're part, at least, of what male to female trans people are trying to do.
Now, Peggy's trying to talk, but if she's not there, I say one thing very short. So, but don't you think then one of the elements of patriarchy is that men like too much the gift, and they want to continue being gifted forever. So when they finish their son time, to stay in the gift mode as sons, they become the husbands who secure through marriage the continuation of the gift.
Yeah,
so
I agree with that. But also capitalism does that. Capitalism takes all the gifts. So the whole gift economy nurtures the capitalist economy and the capitalists.
Yeah, exactly, absolutely.
Right. There's the whole rip off of it. Yeah, of gifting.
Yeah.
We're going to
Peggy.
So I just thought that this is such a fascinating conversation that I don't even want to interrupt it. except that I want to say three things. One is that I think that this is the moment, you know, because of the pandemic, as Paola said, and also because of climate crisis, for something to change, right? And it's not even a choice anymore. Something will change, has to change. So I really wanted to focus on the two T's that Paola mentioned, you know, the thing about translation and transition. And I really appreciated the historical overview, because that really led to the heart of the matter, which is, how do you translate this? How do you build a bridge between North and South, between Indigenous and non-Indigenous? And until we do that, we really can't get much further. And then how do we transition, you know, from where we are now to something different? In the climate talks, for instance, there's talk about a just transition. They're meaning that only in relation to the use of fossil fuels. But I like the notion of a transition. So if we just take those two concepts of translation and transition, and really look at the challenges that each of them faces. So I just give you some examples. So if we think about the translation, the challenges to translation, the first thing is that to just acknowledge that the experiences are so different. There's such vast differences, you know, between North and South, Indigenous and non-Indigenous. And there are people who have been trying to build that bridge. But I remember when I first got involved, the first thing I had to do was to reject the concept of sisterhood as global in order to create space for another voice, you know, from the South. So some of that's been going on a long time, but I think it's really important to recognize that as a challenge in the issue of translation. The other challenge in translation is the language itself. I mean, enormous problems in language. Maria said in the chat that alter the language, you know, just change the language, but to what? You know, I've been trying to define feminism for decades, and I'm still finding myself in spaces where that word is such a problem. You know, now with all the gender stuff going on, even the word woman is now a problem. So at least let us acknowledge the difficulty. Let us see and pinpoint that as a challenge. You know, one of the challenges to translation is the vast differences between us, and secondly, the problems of the language. So that's why I really appreciate Jen and Paola focusing on epistemology, because I think that's an area that we really have to examine. And then those are just two examples of the challenges in the translation. The challenges in transition are even greater. But, you know, I think it's really useful to just think of the challenges in those two areas. So the challenges in transition are kind of obvious, you know, that the market is so all-pervasive. But there's another one that I thought that speaks directly to Jen. Jen summed up her statement as saying that survival depends, our very survival depends on unreciprocated giving and active receiving. That's a very simple statement, and it's so profound. But in that statement does not take account of the external structures, the things that surround the environment, that surrounds the mother and the child. So, you know, what makes it possible for the mother to give, even to give birth? What makes it possible for the child to respond, to receive? All of those structures, those patriarchal structures on the outside. And we could, I mean, one of the useful things would be to think about, you know, what would it take? How do we have to change that external environment to make it possible for that mothering to take place? And I just want to end by saying that just this week, I found, just today, in fact, I've read about a new way that essentialism is coming back. And I just saw an analysis of why Ron DeSantis in Florida was able to get so many women to vote for him. His wife has created a group, a women's group called Moms for Republicans or something. But anyway, so the definition of, as a mother, you can be very powerful. And you can be very powerful because you can prevent your child from being taught, you know, about sexuality, about racism. You can prevent them from those subjects being taught in schools. So that's a huge area where women could be really powerful. And if they could just concentrate on that, they can forget about reproductive rights, you know, their own health, the economy, everything else, because this is an area where they can be so powerful that they can stop the school from teaching, you know. Here's another, you know, just an example of that, the problem with essentializing, the new way that is coming back and being used against women. Anyway, I just wanted to encourage us to, as a possible line of going forward in future discussions, to really think about the challenges in translating and in transition. Thank you.
Thanks, Peggy. Yes, I think those two things are very critical to get from here to there, wherever your here is, to the maternal gift economy. And I think what Peggy does point out, I actually think all three of our guest speakers, including Peggy, point out that each of our experiences personally from getting here to there is a unique experience, but we must, in some way, it is essential and it is necessary to come up with a common language, a common logic, a common way of viewing. And for us, the maternal gift economy is that way, something that is inclusive of everything and everyone. So Jen, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to offer my own thoughts about how to do a transition, and that is, there are so many groups that are trying to create social change. There are so many eco-villages. There are actually a lot of gift economy projects, and people doing just work of compassion and care. There's the whole care movement now in the US and elsewhere. And they do not have the gift economy, the maternal aspect. They have not taken that up. But if they were to do that, it would be great because it could unite them. And so that is one step I think that we could take, or that could be taken. Let me just say also that analyzing the relation to nature also in terms of gifting brings in the whole ecology movement there again. I mean, I think of it as just infecting the movements with the maternal gift economy with the mother. That's Go ahead.
Yeah, can I say, I think a key thing about those other movements is they don't see exchange as a problem. That's almost more key than their failure to see gift, because gift they do see, and as long as they don't see exchange and see that contrast, they don't really see gift either. So that's if you don't see that problem, then you're for fair trade, you know, as opposed to, hey, let's not put these on the market. And you can clearly see it in the environmental movement. It doesn't work. You don't want nature to be resources. But how do you understand that in the paradigmatic ways that are so essential? It's not just let's behave differently. It's like, let's understand we are different.
Yeah.
our society, to be really social, we can't do it on exchange, which doesn't mean you can jump out of it either. I think, Peggy, you're dead right. There has to be transition here, and it isn't easy, but partly the seeing, partly the conceptualizing as we try to move is really, so important. And I guess I'm just so grateful, as somebody who's been thinking of this transformative change for so long, to have that understanding and to feel how it does link so many of the groups, if that could be seen.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think that the spreading the idea of the maternal gift economy in the other movements, at least it's a non-violent way of making change, I mean, that at least and it's only a question of opinion, or not opinion, conviction, or education, or letting people see another way, a different perspective.
Yes. Yes. And while Paula is getting her system back up again, Liliana, do you have something
Yes.
else that you might want to?
Yes, I have a comment from Elizabeth Green. I think the institution of mothering has been engineered to make sure women keep giving, providing free gifted labor on which patriarchy, capitalism, etc. lives and breathes. I think the question is how to reclaim real mother's experience in a world which does not recognize and value real women and mothers. Religion has played an enormous role in the creation of mothering as an institution. Thank you.
And I just want to
Yes.
say very briefly that I also want to put in the experience of children, because we need to see the mothering as a model for everybody, and that is for children from their earliest days. And so if you can see mothering, giving and receiving as the basis of language, for example, then you can see it as a fundamental human activity. And that means that what is happening is that patriarchy is taking the very basis of our humanity in order to make itself bigger and give itself more power. And so that is, if people realize that, and the part that plays in the destruction of the environment, as well as of our species and all the other species, then that awakening could help make a stop.
Thank you, Jen. Paola, are you back with us? I think she has a low bandwidth, I saw when she was on most effectively. So we'll come back to her when she can get back on. Thanks for that, Jen, and Liliana, thanks for sharing that comment. Did you have a question, Liliana? Or a comment that you'd like to share? Another
Yes.
one.
I have another comment from Maria Suarez. She says, why keep talking about human society when we are reclaiming the natural way the planet's species are organized? Gift relation except our species. So if we want to talk about a paradigm, then let's talk about a planetary return to assuming our species as one species that has distorted with exchange societies.
I wanted to propose a kind of a project because to do that, we need to take some weight away from the mothering words and experiences. We need to clean up this more so it will be more nameable by people without all the shadows that they have around. Because it's true that there is a use today of in Italy, we have this new fascist president that is promoting as women as mothers, and that is really a fantastic trick, and against abortion, against that. So when we try to promote that, we have to be smart enough to know the tricks that are played inside. So the struggle against abortion played by the mothers. So I think in every place, we have to clarify these knots, these blind spots. Perhaps they are different for every place, for every land, as you, Letecia, would say, every situation, because this will open up the possibility to imagine transitions in every single place. Sorry, I'm in this situation a little bit complicated to find my words, but I think to think well of where are in every our situation the blind spots, the tricks they play to keep these things together in a bad way, so motherhood becomes something bad or something that is not what we have in mind, is important.
Yeah, I hear you. Jen, did you want to
No,
respond to that?
I agree with you, because there's so much falsity, so much fake news, so much propaganda going around all the time now. And I have analyzed telling the truth as giving a gift that satisfies the need of the other person, whereas telling a lie is like an exchange, because it satisfies your own need rather than the need of the other person. So in a way, all this propaganda is just according to the exchange paradigm, just fits with that so well. And it keeps us from being able to see the gift, among other things, you know, and also it keeps us from being able to solve problems, because everything is, you can't know what's going on. Anyway, that's just my thought.
Yes. And I think it's really important to note that, yes, Jen reminds us all the time that we can't do this alone, which means that this cannot be the only place that you're talking about the maternal gift economy. You need to really, as Paola says, in your own areas, begin to have these discussions to help us clarify the needs of your local people, so we can make this shift, because we can't do it without you. That's the absolute truth. So Liliana, do you have another question for us?
I do. I have a question from Dinava Diaye, and she says, can you clarify the difference between mothering as an institution and mothering?
I think she means the way that you actually use the way that we're using mothering in the maternal gift economy as mother-er, yeah.
Or as an experience.
And Angela
brought that up.
Yeah, Angela brought it up.
Well, I think, I mean, Adrienne Rich didn't have the gift economy theorizing, but she was trying to make a distinction between the relationships of care and human relationships, in how what that experience is, and what mothering in a patriarchal, capitalist, and socialist and feudal society, less feudal because that was less gendered at that point, but just that there are the relationships of value, the experiences of value, the human connections, and then there is the institution of motherhood as we know it, and as women are trapped in and exploited through, and still in those relationships that are human. And that's one of the, and that fewer, you know, in the world we live in here, in the, you know, to me, there's been patriarchy for many thousands of years. Capitalist patriarchy and neoliberal capitalist patriarchy has just allowed exchange to be pervasive. In all the earlier forms of patriarchy, everything wasn't sold. All of nature didn't become a commodity. Food wasn't on the financial market. Human relationships, body parts. I mean, we are in a where everything can be patented. Everything can be patented in this society. So this, to me, the thing about a capitalist patriarchy is that it is absolutely no boundaries. And that's where we are. Everything's been, and I said that the difficulty in for ecologists trying to have nature valued and not do it in the very obvious, feminists trying to have mothering women's work valued and not monetized. And I think that is a major problem in terms of transitioning. To have a gift economy understanding and to see exchange as it is and as the problem it is helps us do the transition a lot. I mean, we still have to figure out the steps and we have to do the political organizing, but understanding it's not just, oh, there's this contradiction. It's like there's exchange here, that we don't want to do it in those terms. And I think it helps a lot. I don't know if that seems very abstract to other people, but to me, it's so concrete in terms of a real tool to do the real transition. It isn't a transition, but
I think the words help, Angela, for people to stimulate their thinking. And I also think that it's really important for us to recognize that these ideas of mothering and motherer, when the receiver is steeped in patriarchy, they hear something entirely different than our meaning.
mm-hmm.
And the minute that we actually recognize they're not understanding, we need to gently clarify, because the minute that we create a tension of defensiveness in them, they get locked into defending their position. That would be mothering as an institution that, of course, is steeped in patriarchy.
Yeah.
But when we're using the word mothering and motherer and maternal and maternal gift economy, we're meaning something that has to do with a reference that Paola points out is a universal expression of what you, Angela, and Jen point out, that it is a human experience and mothering cannot be valued because it's invaluable.
Yeah.
It is something that is essential and invaluable to what it means to be intrinsically human. And that's the challenge.
I think
Yes.
that's very related to the question of why do we need to keep on calling it mothering or motherer? Why do we need to keep on showing that connection when why don't we just use the word human? And I think it is politically so important, because the heart of it is patriarchy. The heart of it is that exchange that mothers don't do and we aren't born into. So, why, hey, it's human. We're talking about human liberation, joy, relationship. Just say it. No, we have to say the truth, the real basis of it. And that has to be understood. And that is, to me, that seems, we have to go on using words that are so complex. And Paola, you're talking about I don't know if you're talking about, I don't think you're saying let's drop the word, but how to do that, how to communicate the essence of the kind of human relationships we want, and bypass the fact that these are gendered. These are gendered, and the ones that we really, like that quote I had about, we're not going to accept the definition of what is human. It's a male definition. We need to change it and make it the heart of that, the donans. And that's where women are stuck. And it's that a lot of it's theft. A lot of that donans is theft, but anyway.
I think when you actually understand that gender as it's valued is only valued in that way from a patriarchal capitalist point of view.
Yeah.
So that's, that I think continues to be the challenge for us to both be listening in the receiving point and when we're speaking, to listen with our bodies to the way that people are receiving us. There's receiving going on in the moment of communication on both sides. It's not just the person speaking that's gifting. We're both receiving information simultaneously. It's not a one and another. And I think that's the challenge. That is the new paradigm thinking, that we're in this together, where it's at the same time, it's simultaneous relationship that cannot be extracted. And that's the challenge that patriarchy constantly is putting us into, piecemeal, this first and that next, prioritizing and doing all of these things. But I think this has been such a stimulating conversation, because these words are being used as weapons against women and females and mothering. But Jen, we have a few minutes left, and I would love to give each of you an opportunity to actually close out what you'd like to leave women with from this discussion. And I know there can be many more hours of conversation around this topic. So Jen?
Yeah, we are human. We are the maternal human. That is who we are as a species. So I think we need to redefine ourselves. We're not mankind. We're maternal human beings. All of us, men too. They just have gotten put into an artificial category. And I just wanted to say, like other groups, like there are so many, like there's the Buy Nothing group that has spread like wildfire. And they don't have any idea of the maternal gift economy, as far as I know. So there are lots of different places that we can link hands with people that are trying to do alternatives.
Thank you. Paola, are there some words you'd like to leave?
Yeah, before the connection goes away, but this word maternal is something we have to push not against, for, as you say, Jen, but also I want you to think about this. When one of the failures, and forgive me, Angelo, of paying women's work in the salary for domestic work was that women first didn't want to be measured by money,
yes.
which is very symptomatic, so we have to think about these things that pop in, because, for example, human today can be a word which is a veil if you don't break into it. And so we have to perhaps to be very attentive of language, very much in these days. And this is also one of the issues with this episode, what I call, according to this Portuguese founder of the social forms, the epistemologies of the South, because we have we have to listen each other in a different way, going beyond the certain comparison, so on. So this is a whole job work to be done. We can have another meeting on that, but I think this comparison of epistemologies that produce different conclusions in different worlds is something we have to go deeper inside the gift economy, because it's the same, and these indigenous cultures are ahead of us in the gifts valuing, and so we have to learn, but we have to understand deeper, not just take the slogans in a way, right? Which means that the work challenge is very important. It's because it's this tension between the experiences and the words. So we have to try to continue, as in feminist methodology, to give words to our experiences and confront those other women and mother experiences and their words. And it's a whole complex work that we cannot skip in a way.
Thank you, Paola. Angela M., do you have some words you'd like us to close with here?
Well, this is, of course, this discussion is very, very related to questions of gender and sexuality and gender identity and women and so on. And that's another whole discussion. That's
Yeah.
Another question of terminology, another question of clarification, and so on and so forth. Which I noticed that I think Maria Suarez put that comment in the chat, and it's a whole. It's a discussion in itself, shall we say, and it's not unrelated for sure.
Absolutely. And we can put that forward into our hopper for a future salon or a special discussion group, if you will, because we've had them in the past,
Yeah.
that we can set aside some time where there's a more open forum where people can actually have a more free-flowing discussion. So thank you for that, Angela. I think it is very important. And also you, Maria Suarez. And Jen, is there anything else you'd like to say before I actually close this out for today?
No, just thank you so much, everybody. And thank you, Letecia, and thank you, Angela and Paola and Peggy and Diane and Liliana and Elena. We have such a wonderful group of people that do this together. And thank you all the people that came to this salon. What a gift to me that you have listened to all of us.
And thank you, Jen.
Yes.
Thank you, Jen, for gathering us here all together. I wanted to just make note to everyone who's listening to us that our next event will be not quite 2 weeks. We plan to see you. We hope to see you on the 25th, which is the Friday after in the United States Thanksgiving. So 2 weeks would be the 26th, but it's actually the 25th that we're going to be doing a little bit longer format. We'll have 6 speakers. This will highlight actually our 3rd anniversary. It will be our 3rd conference that we'll have with Vandana Shiva and Genevieve Vaughan and others that will be coming, Mary Condren and Darsha Navarez and Sherry Mitchell, and I can't remember who else, but we are really excited. And for our community, the Maternal Gift Economy Network, the silver lining for us and for you have been these salons. So I want to thank you all for joining us, especially Diane and Ellen Escoco, who's in Bali right now on her way to Australia. And she was in Croatia before that, but she has constantly supported us and being here with us. Diane and Liliana, of course, Paola, Jen, and Angela Miles. I'm Letecia Layson. This session will be recorded. I know that there were many questions and comments that didn't get shared, but I just have to say it is such an important topic. And I hope that in the not too distant future, we'll see you again and perhaps have a discussion with you. The recording will be up at the maternalgifteconomymovement.org. If you have any questions or comments, please do send them to us. If you have a suggestion for a salon or if you would like to participate with us in organizing, send it to us at maternalgifteconomy@gmail.com. And we would love to have you join us in this endeavor because we want to radicalize the world and make that shift. So let's catch the wave and start the movement. So we'll see you on Friday, November the 25th. Please stay safe, be well, and be kind to one another. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you again soon. Bye for now.
Bye.